This lesson is about Alexander the Great. At 20 years old, he came to the throne of the Argead royal family. He took his place at the head of the Macedonian troops and went ahead with the invasion that his father, Philip II, had planned of the Achaemenid or Persian Empire. The Persian Empire is run at this point by a family called the Achaemenids. And Alexander the Great, at 20 years old, is going to go ahead with his father's planned invasion. His father had been assassinated in 336, just 2 years after the Battle of Chaeronea in 338. In the course of the next 13 years, just 13 years, Alexander conquers this entire Persian Empire, one of the largest empires the world has ever known, all the way from the Greek mainland through the center of Iran today, Iraq, into Afghanistan and India, Egypt, Israel, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, all the way into southern Russia today. He turned back when he got into India, not because he was finally forced to or because he had lost any battles, but his troops basically mutinied on him if he didn't stop his conquest. Otherwise, it seems he would have perhaps continued to go east toward China. There's 3 major battles that he fights against Darius III, the ruler of Persia, the head of the Achaemenid Empire at this time. And there's a number of interesting and important sieges. I won't go over each of those in detail, and you've read about them at any rate. The first one is the Battle of the Granicus River. These are names that you should be vaguely familiar with at least. Battle of the Granicus River is in May 334 BC. The Battle of Issus, you can see each of these on this map here. 334 BC, the Battle of the Granicus River. Battle of Issus in 333. You can see that in the map right there, and you can trace Alexander's route in this conquest. He undertakes the siege of Tyre, which is right here. It's a city that's actually off the coast. You can't see it from this map. That took him about 2 years to accomplish. It's an island fortress, and everybody thought it was impenetrable, but Alexander persisted and patiently took the city of Tyre. After defeating the Persian army led by Darius III on 2 occasions, outnumbered, Alexander then moves on to Tyre. Then he moves into Egypt, and he goes into the middle of the Egyptian desert to the Oracle of Ammon, where, according to legend, he is greeted as the Son of God. Without this priest knowing he was coming, the priest of the Oracle of Ammon greeted him as the Son of God, confirming his suspicions, as his mother had told him that he was actually the son of the god Apollo. The next, after he goes into Egypt and stays there for a while, by the way, founding the very important city of Alexandria on the Egyptian coast. Alexandria is right about here, not really in the center of Egypt, maybe more like that second arrow right there. The exact spot is not crucial. Alexander forms the city of Alexandria, along with a number of other cities called Alexandria. This one's on the coast of Egypt. Throughout his conquest, you can see the Persian Empire is in the kind of orange color, and Macedon is in green. The Greeks are kind of already under Macedonian control as of 338, the Battle of Chaeronea. Philip II dies in 336. Alexander undertakes his conquest. It takes him 13 years. His first battle is in 334, Granicus River, then Issus, then the siege of Tyre. After he leaves Egypt in the Oracle of Ammon, where he starts acting like he's the Son of God, he faces the Persians in the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC. Now he's kind of more in the heartland of Persia, the Persian Empire, right here, 331 BC. And then not long after that, Darius III is killed by his own officers. Alexander, maybe this is legend, maybe it's not, supposedly catches up to the fleeing emperor and witnesses his death and takes over the command of the Persian Empire. There is still some resistance, and the elite try to set up some kind of resistance against Alexander, but it's really over once Darius III is killed. Alexander assumes control. In the process of this conquest, Alexander founds a number of cities, very Greek cities, throughout this newly conquered area, and all the way from the coast of Africa in Egypt, Alexandria, the famous Alexandria, as far as Afghanistan, where he meets his wife, and all the way into the heartland of the Persian Empire, modern-day Iran. And there's people today in places like India and Pakistan who claim or even appear to be descendants of Alexander's Macedonian soldiers. Many legends still persist in India, Pakistan, Afghanistan about the time that Alexander spent there. The name to the accumulated legends that spring up about Alexander that were very popular in Europe, especially in the Middle Ages as well, are the Alexandrian romance. There's all these legends and stories that spring up about Alexander. Everywhere he went, in Pakistan you have stories about Alexander and magic carpets and flying carpets and things like this. And in medieval Europe you have similarly wild and fantastic stories about Alexander the Great. Even though he didn't even make it into Europe, the stories about him grew and grew and grew for over 1,000 years. And like I said, some still persist to this day. The most famous of the cities that he founds is the Alexandrian Egypt. That city, you'll learn in the post-Alexandrian period, in the Hellenistic age, that time period, that city is one of the most important cities in all of world history, and in particular in antiquity. Athens is perhaps the most important city. Rome may be more important than Athens. It's a close call. And then Alexandria is perhaps in third place of those top three cities, Athens, Rome, and Alexandria. But Alexandria is less known perhaps, but maybe it might even be the most important city of antiquity, and among the most important cities in all of human civilization, Alexandria in Egypt. It's still a city that exists to this day, but it's not a major metropolitan area, and certainly not an important city today. The death of Alexander happens when he's just 33 years old. He had barely finished his conquest, and in some ways, if you had looked at the way he lived, it was probably not a surprise to most people. This is a good idea of what Alexander looked like from an ancient statue. A theme in the stories about Alexander is the Greek word pathos, which means something like yearning or desire or never being satisfied. And supposedly that's the look that Alexander has in his eyes, that he's never satisfied. He always wants to see new lands, make more conquest, and he never stops. The details of Alexander's death are known in some detail. He has good biographies written about him. Starting on May 29th in 323, when he's in Babylon, which is now in the nation of Iraq, Alexander holds a banquet for his admiral, Nearchus. He starts getting very sick at this point, and his illness gets worse for the next 12 days, almost 2 weeks. By June 2nd, he is still sick, but he's discussing a possible invasion of the Arabian Peninsula. A few days later, he is forced to acknowledge how sick he really is, and that death is probably on the horizon. He orders all of his officials to remain within call of his bedside. By the evening of June 6th, he's almost unable to speak. He gives his official ring to a man called Perdiccas, one of his senior officers, so that the administration can continue to function in spite of his serious illness. It's unclear whether this was some kind of transition or official transfer of power. And around this time, once Perdiccas gets his ring, a rumor spreads through the camp that he's already dead. The troops crowd around the palace that he's in. They try to break down the walls, and they eventually knock down a wall, and his veterans, his soldiers, file through to see him one last time. Most of the time, he was too weak to do more than anything, rather than just kind of recognize people, give a little sign of recognition with his eyes, and that's the end. By June 9th, the king's friends are gathered around his bedside once more. They ask, because they sense that death is near, to whom he bequeaths his kingdom, and Alexander allegedly weakly whispers, quote, "to the strongest." His supposedly last words were, "I foresee a great funeral contest over me." Strange way to die and not give any kind of sign or official transfer of power. By the morning of June 10th, 323, Alexander was dead at the age of 33. Question is, he's only 33 years old. Was he killed? All of our ancient sources preserve a tradition that Alexander was poisoned. The poisoning theory, although exciting to think about and provocative, the evidence is circumstantial. I like the idea most of all that perhaps Aristotle, the tutor of Alexander, was involved. Again, that's pure kind of speculation, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not out of the question at all, because Alexander had started to do some things that were problematic. He had killed one of his friends when he was drunk and in anger at dinner. He had mistreated a number of his soldiers. Once he became assumed power of the Persian Empire, he started asking his officers to perform proskynesis. People that had grown up with him all his life were asked to bow before him and kiss the ground. I don't know if you can see the final S on that word right there. Proskynesis is what the Persian emperor demanded of people who were in his presence. They were to bow down on the ground and kiss the ground in his presence. Alexander was adopting many strange Persian traditions and habits. He was forcing some of his officers to marry Persian women. He had announced that he was going to replace his Macedonian army with a Persian army for the next invasion. All of these things had alienated him from people he had grown up with and served with early. For example, some of the people he asked to do proskynesis had been accustomed to kissing him on the cheek when they greeted, which was common for Macedonian men to do. They go from kissing him on the cheek as a normal greeting to bowing down before him. So it's not out of the question Alexander was poisoned, that he had gone a bit crazy. He was so young to have so much power. He had been in combat. He had been, struck on the head. He had suffered, through a lot of warfare. Perhaps he was poisoned, but it's not definite. The other idea is that he was just suffering from malaria. His apparent alcoholism, which is widely reported in the sources, probably doesn't help his malaria. He doesn't stop partying when he starts getting sick. He just doesn't slow down. And he did sustain a very serious wound among the other wounds he had gotten during this 13-year campaign in India, which probably all contributed to his perhaps weakened body and his inability to fight the malaria more successfully. He did marry a girl, a local Afghanistan Princess Roxanne. She was pregnant at the time of his death. It was supposedly agreed, or at least it was agreed in theory by Alexander's commanders, that they would divide up his kingdom, and if the child Roxanne gave birth to was a boy, they would turn over Alexander's territories to him when he came of age. The child born was indeed a boy, Alexander IV. He got that title, but he would not live long to take his rightful place as king of the Macedonians. He was killed not long after his birth. There was a short time when he was ostensibly in command, under the control of Alexander's officers, along with his half-brother Philip Aridaeus, the half-brother, of Alexander, rather. He was, however, mentally incapacitated, perhaps because he was poisoned by Alexander's mother. Okay, so Philip Aridaeus, who is not competent to do anything, he's mentally disabled. He is put on the throne along with the infant son, Alexander IV, two totally incompetent rulers, just figureheads, while the generals of Alexander kind of struggle behind the scenes to emerge supreme, it seems. The successors of Alexander are called the Diadokoi, and it's doubtful that they ever really intended Alexander IV to come of age and to rule. Missing the word rule right there. Alexander IV and his mother are killed by a man named Cassander, and he is among the first to kind of break out and take over, at least attempt to take over, Macedon in 310 BC. So for about, Alexander dies in 323, until about 310, you have this period in which there's some kind of ostensible rule run by the generals of Alexander, his senior officers and closest advisors. But by 310, it starts to break down with Alexander IV, his mother, and Philip Aridaeus all kind of disappearing, and Cassander is the one that ends up taking over Macedon in 310. After this, and in fact during this time, Alexander's inner circle had been slowly dividing up his conquest, and what they will eventually do is form individual kingdoms. Among the divisions that are most important to know are the one of his generals called Ptolemy, it'll be covered in the next lesson, takes Egypt, for example. Another one of his generals, Seleucus, takes as much as he can of this territory. Usually Macedon and Greece is under the control of a separate family and dynasty. There's an important dynasty that emerges in the city of Pergamum, which is on the coast of Asia Minor. And in addition to these four major divisions, there are sometimes others, and the borders of them shift as they fight with each other for the next 300 years for supremacy. Alexander's inner circle slowly divides up this conquest, jockeys for position, carves out their little kingdom, and there's about four major ones that emerge, 4 or 5 at various points, different little kingdoms that emerge. But for the next 300 years, these kingdoms and family dynasties, called the Diadokoi, just struggle with one another and fight and do battle with one another, sometimes forming short-term alliances, but mostly they're in conflict. All the while that they're tearing each other apart, remember this is after that long period of the Peloponnesian War, the First Peloponnesian War, the Second Peloponnesian War, the Corinthian War, the Theban hegemony, all the while that these Greeks continue to fight amongst one another, Rome is steadily growing and will eventually conquer all of these Hellenistic kingdoms in the second half of that Hellenistic age. Hellenistic age runs from 322 to 31 BC, starting about 168 BC down to 31 BC. Rome slowly conquers Macedon, the Seleucid dynasty, which is what this one is called. I should say Pergamum. First comes Macedon, then Pergamum, then the Seleucid dynasty, and finally Egypt in 31 BC. That'll be the topic of the next lesson.